Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more juicy content from me. Hello and welcome back. Tonight I'm going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and that topic is thought distortions. But before I go into the topic, I'm going to just by way of reintroduction, my name is Dr. 𝙒𝙚𝙞𝙘𝙝. I am a physician coach, an author, a speaker, and I help busy physicians and non-physicians defeat and prevent burnout, as well as create new careers, businesses, and vocations in 6 months or less without stress and burnout. I've helped many doctors and non-doctors start new businesses, develop new streams of income, start charities, raise money for charities, get new jobs, etc., 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 to the end goal of an overall improvement in the look, feel, and functionality of your whole life. So here we go. Tonight I'm going to be talking about thought distortions, and I wrote about them in my book. If you haven't got this book, please get it. You don't even have to be a woman to benefit from it. It's called Free to Be, the Empowered Woman's Handbook. And if you know a woman, buy it for her. Even if you're not a woman, you can read it. There's a lot in there that applies not only to women, but to men also. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about some of the thought distortions I wrote about in my book. There are 13 of them currently recognized by therapists, but I'm only going to be talking about 5. I'm not going to go into all 13. You want the rest? Get the book. The link will be in the show notes and in the comments. So first of all, what are thought distortions, right? What are they? Thought distortions are, as the name implies, distortions of thought. So these are thinking patterns that we think are normal, but they're not. And a lot of times we think they're normal because this is how we've always thought, and this is how we do things. 𝙒𝙝𝙞𝙘𝙝 said, I think, therefore I am, right? And sometimes we conflate our thoughts with our being. Who we are is what we think, and nothing could be further from the truth. Now, our thoughts are you, and your thoughts are your thoughts. And if you succumb to thought distortions, you may just think, oh, this is a normal way to think, not realizing that it's actually not a normal way to think. And these thought patterns are preventing you from, as they say, living your best life. So I'm going to talk about just 5 of them. They're in my book, as well as the remainder to make 13. So, number 1, jumping to conclusions. Jumping to conclusions is a thought distortion. For example, you come into your office, right? And actually, this happened to me once. I came in and I was kind of I was mad about something that had happened on the way in. And someone had left their computer in my office and thinking, oh, sorry, my computer's in your office. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, why did this person conclude that the reason why I was frowning was because their computer was in my office? That is the classical example of jumping to conclusions. This person saw my frown and assumed that it was because their computer was in my office, and nothing could have been further from the truth. I wasn't even thinking about their computer. I was thinking about what had been happening before I walked in to the office. So when we jump to conclusions, we don't allow ourselves the mental space to process what's actually happening. Instead, our mind just gives a reason to something without any evidence. For example, you walk into your office, again, someone's not smiling at you, and you assume that it's because of something you did, which may or may not be the case. How to avoid jumping to conclusions? Ask questions. And if it's a scenario in which you cannot ask questions, don't assume. Take things for face value. unless it's something that's glaringly obvious, right? If you punch somebody and they, get mad or start to cry, then you can probably assume that the reason they're crying is because you punched them. But not so for a lot of things that happen that we just jump to conclusions about. The second one that's sort of related to jumping to conclusions is mind reading. This is when you speculate and assume what other people are thinking without any evidence of the fact of whether they're thinking that or not. How many times have I worked with clients that say things like, oh, if I post on social media, people are going to think that this has come up. If I post on social media, people are going to think that I'm not a good doctor or something. I'm like, what? If I don't, again, this is maybe doctors talking about posting things on social media that have nothing to do with medicine. Or people are going to think I don't take the profession seriously. I'm like, what? What people? And why are you reading the minds of how many of 1 billion social media users there are? Or, oh, if I do this, people are going to think that. Oh, I'm sure every time you said to yourself, I'm sure people are thinking, or people must be thinking, or this person must be thinking, you are engaging in mind reading because you don't know what anybody is thinking, let alone what a whole group of people are thinking or a whole social media platform is thinking. People must be thinking this. That is mind reading. And once again, a way to stop yourself in your tracks is to ask yourself the question, do I really know what people are thinking, or am I just succumbing to a thought distortion? And this would be a good idea when it comes to other thought distortions. Another one, which is also a bit of an offshoot of jumping to conclusion, is called fortune telling. This is predicting that predicting a bad outcome of something, maybe a venture or whatever, based on little or no evidence. I think that is more or less self-explanatory. Fortune telling. You can't tell the future. You don't know the future. You don't know what's going to happen until it actually happens. So refrain from fortune telling, or else you will stop yourself in your tracks on the road to achievement. Until something is done, you don't know what's going to happen. And how many times does fortune telling stop people in their tracks? Well, I want to pitch this idea to but they're probably going to think it's stupid. They're not going to like it, and I'm not going to get it. A lot of times we boo ourselves off the stage before anyone has even got a chance to see us perform, just because of fortune telling, just because we assume the outcome of something is going to be bad. It's not, if an outcome is going to be good or bad, you cannot know that, and definitely not from fortune telling. And, with this and other thought distortions, we conflate our thoughts with knowledge. We conflate our thoughts with knowledge. We're jumping to conclusions with mind reading and with fortune telling. We think that our thoughts are knowledge or fact or truth, and that is not the case. Our thoughts can be lies. Our thoughts can be opinions. Our thoughts can be complete and utter myths. Now on to the next two. All or nothing thinking. I find this to be very common among high performers, high achievers, perfectionists, doctors, all or nothing thinking. And I can see where in medicine it's, well, I wouldn't say an advantage, but, in medicine, we deal with a lot of absolutes. You can't just give somebody the wrong medicine for something and hope it works. You have to know what you're doing. But all or nothing thinking is the temptation to think that because you're doing a little, you're doing nothing. For example, how many times have I met a client say, "Oh, do you exercise?" Well, when I was 17, I used to ride 20 miles a day, and now I'm 55, and all I can manage is 2 miles, so I'm not exercising. Hold up. You ride a bike for 2 miles a day, that's a win, honey, that's a win. So between all over here and nothing over here is what? There's some, there's half, there's most. All or nothing thinking tells you that even if you're doing a little, it's not good enough, that you have to be perfect at everything, every time, 100% all the time. And that is just not how life works. It's not. Sometimes you get an A grade in something. Sometimes you get a B grade. Sometimes you get a C grade. Sometimes you may get an F grade in something too. It just happens. Nobody is 100% perfect at everything every time. And a lot of times, all or nothing thinking stops us in our tracks from achieving because, for example, you think that the minute you start a business, you're going to have 100,000 clients who are going to pay you $1 million each, etc., etc. But that's not how it works. You start with one client paying you maybe $100 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever. Right? And then you go to 2 and 3 and all. The temptation to think that, oh, because I don't have 500,000 clients and I have 5,000, my business has failed. Because I set a goal to make $1 million and I only made 500,000. I've failed. No, you're just on your way. It's a journey, not a static point. All or nothing thinking is very destructive because when you think that some is nothing, then you get discouraged and you stop entirely. So, last but not the least, I'm going to talk about magical thinking. Magical thinking is when you tie together two unrelated things. I truly believe that this saying comes from magical thinking. Why do bad things happen to good people? The one doesn't have anything to do with the other. The fact that you're a good person doesn't mean that you can't get sick, maybe get robbed, maybe fall down on the street or whatever, right? So, I donated money to a charity and I got in a car accident. The one has nothing to do with the other. Or a common one I've heard is, why is it that when something good happens, something bad happens to me right afterwards? Maybe not really. Maybe it's just the way you're seeing it. Good things and bad things happen simultaneously. Many times they don't have anything to do with each other. For example, you got a huge tax refund and your windshield got cracked. The one had nothing to do with the other. The tax refund came to the IRS and your windscreen got cracked because maybe you drove under a bridge and something fell on it, or you drove behind some truck that was spewing out rocks. I don't know. But you can see how magical thinking is also very unhelpful because it really makes people not face reality. I've heard it in various forms, especially from people of faith. Why is it that I'm a person of faith, so why do I have these problems? Really? Faith doesn't exempt you from problems. Faith doesn't exempt you from problems, right? Oh, it's the 31st of the year and all my problems haven't gone away. No, they won't go away because you're a living, breathing human being and problems are just part of life. So I'm just going to recap the 5 thought distortions I talked about. And I'm going to leave a link, like I said, in the show notes and the comments for you to get this book. It's called Free to Be, The Empowered Woman's Handbook. Oh my goodness. You need to read this book, whether you're a woman or not. And I talk about thought distortion. I talk about so many things in the book. I mean, there's not enough time for me to talk about the immense value that this book has brought to a lot of people and the immense value it can bring to you. So I'm going to recap once again the thought distortions that I talked about. Number 1 is jumping to conclusions. Number 2, mind reading. Number 3, fortune telling. Number 4, all or nothing thinking. And number 5, magical thinking. Thank you very much for watching and for listening, and I will see you next time.